and welcome to another episode of Get to Know a Theater with Heilman and Haver. We are very pleased to be at the Tacoma Little Theatre in Tacoma's Stadium District, and we're here with Chris Serface, the Managing Artistic Director. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us
Welcome
on the
to the show.
podcast.
Yeah, got a lot of activity this direction. I can't see it, but you got the sets being painted for Steel Magnolias coming up soon. You got folks outside rehearsing. All kinds of fun, and it's our first visit, actually, to your fine establishment. We're excited to be here. Talk a little bit about the history, a lot of history. So we're going back all the way to 1918. We've got some civic-minded community members founded the Tacoma chapter of the Drama League of America, comprising the Civic Drama School and TLT. The first show was in 1919, George Bernard Shaw's You Never Can Tell. Can you give us the cliff notes on the next 100 years, please?
Next 104 years.
Yeah, this might be one of the only theaters around that survived 2 global pandemics.
Yeah,
That is something we hang on to, the fact that we made it through 2. We're still kicking. We were founded in 1918, as you mentioned earlier, and it was part of the Little Theater movement across America. So as you look back, a lot of theaters were blank Little Theater, Tulsa Little Theater, Burien Little Theater, all of these little groups. And over time, some of them have changed their names. Many of them are still in existence, but a lot of them unfortunately faded away. We're one with tenacity, and we stuck through it. We kept going. And as time went by, we kind of traveled around different areas in Tacoma until we found our home here in Stadium District in 1940. This was Tacoma Auto Repair, the half of the building that we're sitting now in, the auditorium, and they turned it into a theater. Then, in the 1950s, they bought the vacant lot next door and built the state-of-the-art lobby and bathrooms and connected the 2 buildings, and it became
small things.
Small things. Yeah. Became the space that we know today as Tacoma Little Theater. And then pretty much for the next 70 years, not a lot was done to the building, although we presented shows every single year. And it was the place to be in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, and now in the 10s and the 20s. We've had such a great community mind behind it, and the fact that it is theater for the community, by the community. And we bring you the shows. Something you noticed as we were talking about our theories of how we present theater is the theater you want to see and the theater you didn't know you want to see.
I love that.
And that's a moniker we picked up about 9 years ago here. And we truly do involve our community with everything we do. The reason this place exists is because of the community. And it is so much fun to have actors from all over the Puget Sound area on our stages and showing us what they can do. We've had our ups and downs over the years, as every nonprofit does. And definitely the pandemic of 2020, not the 1918 Spanish flu one, but the 2020 one, definitely threw us for a curve, and we didn't know quite how that was going to bring us out of everything. But we made it, and a lot of that was through the support of the community, through the grant programs that were available to the nonprofit arts in the country that helped sustain us and let us come out of it to actually end up stronger than we were before the pandemic. We're sitting in the newly remodeled auditorium.
Boy, these seats are comfortable. Got to get in here and test these things,
Yeah,
folks.
armrest in case you want to separate yourself.
You can snuggle or not snuggle.
That's right.
And you can also, it's also great because you can put your specialty drink for every show in here.
Okay, specialty drinks.
Specialty
We need
drinks.
to hear about that.
Steel Magnolias will have the Drink Your Juice Shelby, which will be a tequila sunrise. The Red Armadillo, which is a vodka cranberry, and the Blush or Bashful, which is a coquito, which is a drink that we had last year in one of our shows, and it's really good. But we like to do a little bit of fun when we bring our specialty drinks into play. But with the start of the pandemic, we were already planning on remodeling the auditorium in 2020. And then we were given the gift of time. We'd already done our capital fundraising for it. So we had the money. We'd built in staff money into that as well. So we actually were able to keep everything kind of going along in helping with the remodel. And
Gave you something to do, right?
it did. And the nice thing is we were able to do more than we'd wanted to originally because we were given the gift of time. Instead of cramming everything into 3 months, we had 15 months. So we did a little bit more in the lobby area, which we gave it a nice facelift and a sprucing up and kind of brought back the mid-century aesthetic of the building from when it was put together in the 50s. We redid our outdoor sign, which we brought back to what it looked like in the mid-50s when it opened versus the different facades that it had over the years. And then in the auditorium, what started off in 2018 as a let's just replace the seats turned into a let's go all the way down to the concrete slab and rebuild a new rake, change the seating chart, add a 25-degree arc to all the seats. We lost seats in the process, which normally whenever you remodel, you think, oh, we're going to make it bigger and better. We actually brought our seating level down. So we seat 215 in here, but we have leg room, better sight lines, and just a better overall patron experience, both in coming in and just watching, and also the rake so you can see over everybody, the staggering of the seats so you can see between the seats. It really made it better. We upgraded the audio system in here and added a few other toys too, which I'm sure you're
Yeah,
going to
we
bring
walked
up.
around the theater, the auditorium a little bit before we started the interview, and yeah, there's not a bad seat, not a bad sight line, and there's ADA compliant seating in the back as well. So you've got all of that taken care of. But amenities, so we've talked about the seats and cup holders, armrests. What about some of the other amenities? You hinted at, I guess, a bar.
We do. We have a full concessions area, which does have a full bar. When I came to the theater, they served popcorn, which for me in a live theater, I was like, oh, live popcorn in the theater. It's like, no.
A lot of squeaking from the seats.
But our patrons love it. And so I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. I won't say no. And it's become one of our favorite things. And we do for our season ticket holders, we always do something free for them every time they come to one of the productions. It could be something as small as a free cookie. When we did Picasso at Le Panagile, they could either have Einstein's notebook or Picasso's sketchbook. And it was just a little tablet. We've given different trinkets over the years, but the one that patrons get mad if we don't offer them is the free popcorn, because they love their popcorn. But it's just one of the perks of being a season ticket holders. But if we look at our concessions, it's our number one selling item in concessions, which is kind of crazy. Next up is the bar, of course. It's the second top seller.
Top the bar, really? Okay.
But we really, as we've gone through and adapted, we've kind of come to what we think works well, which our patrons love the popcorn, they love the cookies, the candy, the drinks, the sodas, the water. We haven't gone any further than that.
Oh, we're sold. We talk about amenities. Now we could talk about tech as well. Something I found really fascinating. In the 40s, there was installed a turntable for the stage. And
Correct.
It was, let me get this right, surplus parts from the U.S. Army Railroad Roundhouse. So you've replaced a lot in here, made a lot of changes, and I want to talk about, again, the newest piece of technology here in a minute, but let's hear more about the turntable.
The turntable is a 32-foot revolve on the stage. It used to be motorized, and over time that failed, to where my first show I did here in 2009 as an actor, part of the show was me standing backstage holding onto a harness and moving my feet on the ground
Pedaling a bicycle.
to turn the turntable. And over the course of our tenure here, the current staff, we've used the revolve a number of times, and it's always been manually powered. It came to where we were directing Clue live on stage, which is a fabulously brilliant show if you've never seen it, but it's based on the movie and the game, so you get all the great comedy that you'd expect with that story. And the way that the set was designed, you have to go to different rooms in the house. It's like, how can we do that effectively? And it's like, well, of course, the revolve. But boy, is that going to be a lot of turning the revolve. So Blake York, our technical director, who loves the toys of the trade, did a little bit of research and came into a company that rents revolve technology motors. So we rented it through the help of a donor. We brought it in. It's computerized so that if you said turn 35 degrees, we go, and you'd say turn 360 degrees the other way. How about turn 360 degrees 7 times? And it will turn 7 times. And the variable speeds and the directions it goes, and it revolutionized what we could do. The Clue set became its own character in the show, where the actors, the first scene, you start off in the hallway, and the audience wasn't ready for the set to revolve, and all of a sudden you heard and applause happening when they made that first transition into the next room. Then it got even more crazy when they went to the next room, and the next room, and then suddenly they're like, well, that's 4. There's only 4, but wait, there's a 5th room and a 6th room, because we would redress the rooms while they weren't seen.
Wow.
So you truly felt like you were going all the different places.
Room quick changes.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I imagine helps the pace of your shows. In shows that use the turntable, you mentioned, obviously you don't use it in every show, but one of the things that tends to slow down a show sometimes is set changes, bringing large pieces in, taking furniture off, having that option to rotate to a different room or a different location has to improve the pace of some of these shows.
Make some shows possible to do it all.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, it's not perfect for every show, but for the shows where it works extremely well.
So old technology turned into new technology, and now you've got some seriously new hardcore technology, and we'll have to get some photos or something if we can to dub over our interview here. But tell us about the newest toy you have installed here.
One of our newest toys is, during the pandemic, we were looking for ways to make ourselves more creative.
I was going to say.
What can we do? What can we do that'll be a wow factor?
Right.
And we had been going to other theaters and touring around, and as tours come through town, a lot of use of LED video wall technology. And we thought, let's see what we can do. So Blake started doing a lot of research into it and found some options for us that were viable, that didn't break the bank. And through some donor support and some funding, we were able to get a 12 by 30 foot video wall that, again, isn't necessarily perfect for every show, but for the shows it is, it revolutionizes what you can do. The show that it debuted on was our holiday show last season, which was The Wizard of Oz. And the ability to go between all the different lands of Oz and get that kind of chroma feel when you're in the beginning and the black and white feel, and then move into the colors of Oz was fantastic. The sets changed through that. It was a unit set with the backs changing with a few things rolling on and off. The Witch's Castle was an animated castle where you had fire billowing and smoke and things happening in the background that you could see.
And this is being designed and programmed in-house.
In-house by
Blake's name keeps coming up here.
Yep.
This magician.
A magician is a good phrase for him on that.
Staff magician. Staff
That's
wizard.
in the program. Look for
That's
staff
right,
magician
yeah.
now. But even to the point where we were able to, in the Twister of The Wizard of Oz, when Miss Gulch is riding her bicycle in the Twister and then Dorothy sees her transform into the Wicked Witch, we were able to create that. We filmed the actress who played both roles and then did the magic in Photoshop and turned it into part of the cyclone, where our director and our sound designer were in a rowboat. If you remember in The Wizard of Oz, you see the rowboat going by. Well, they were the ones in the rowboat that flew by on our wall for that.
Another differentiator of it. But
Yeah.
'cause
And-
I've seen it deployed in larger theaters, and it does, again, afford you a number of options, like you're saying, and deployed in a space like this, I can imagine, again, it's going to give more depth to the shows, more options for you to present, and again, shows that couldn't be done otherwise.
And one of the great things is it's modular. So while it's in its current form right now, it's a 12 by 30 foot wall. You can put that into any configuration you want within technical limitations. But for example, we did a show called The Happiest Song Plays Last, and it takes place overseas and in a brownstone in the Northeast. And Blake's set design for it brought the wall up closer to the front of the proscenium, but then there were portals in it. So you actually had part of the set built behind the video wall and then an opening and things happening in front of it. So they interacted between the two planes of that. For The Happy Song Plays Last, we deployed both the Revolve and the video wall and built the video wall into 3 sections where there was one stage left, a center, and one stage right with a gap between the platforms. And then the Revolve brought the furniture in to the next scene while the video wall changed and took us into the next location. And that was something that we wouldn't have been able to do 3 years ago, and something that 10 years ago we wouldn't have been able to dream of doing.
A perfect marriage of old and new technology, and one more reason for people to come out, get off their couches, and because really, let's talk about the competition that local theaters have with everything just delivered right to your living room. Another reason to come out and see. I mean, real spectacle you guys are putting on.
Yeah.
It's really phenomenal.
It is. That's the joy of live theater. Is it really is? You are right there when it's happening, and it's we were talking a little bit pre-interview about the fact that during the pandemic we didn't necessarily subscribe to let's film a show and put it on screen. It's like it's not quite the same as coming into the theater, and that's one of the things we've loved is that people have come back. And it's been ebb and flow as things happen within the navigation of the pandemic, but we are happy to have our patron base back and supporting what we do here.
Well, that actually takes us right into the next question nicely.
Yeah, so your official mission statement, and I want to read this to make sure I get it right. Tacoma Little Theater enriches the community through all types of quality live theater experiences, which we can see any number of reasons why they are quality live theater experiences. And then you talked about your working motto, we bring you the theater you want to see and the theater that you didn't know you wanted to see. One thing we've discussed on our show and with other theaters is that balance between filling the seats through deploying
Comfortable
popular
seats.
shows. Yeah, well,
Definitely comfortable
sure.
seats.
These are seats,
Much less to the challenge
Yeah.
now.
but yeah, popular shows that are going to fill the seats and sell tickets, and shows that are pet projects or things that are really passionate, are the directors or you're passionate about. How do you balance that within a particular season?
It's not easy, and we will fumble. And I think we will all fumble as we go through things and figuring out what is that balance. How are we serving our community best? And there is that ultimate factor, the fact that to stay open, ultimately theater is a business, and we do have to keep people here. But how do we find that balance of going right back to the theater you want to see? So yeah, everybody wants to see The Odd Couple, Arsene Gold Lace, but then do they really want to see The Pillow Man? Maybe not, but we're going to show it to them and make them understand that there is other types of theater out there.
And then win awards.
Well, thank you. And then give them those opportunities. And so we try and balance our season a little bit with the ones that'll bring them in and make them, yeah, I love being here. And then maybe 2 shows later, I'll be like, oh, wow, I've never heard of that show, but geez, that was different and I really enjoyed it. And it made me think something different than I normally would when I come to the theater. Particularly as we look at how we can also approach older titles and breathe new life into them. We're right now, our production of Steel Magnolias, which goes September 9th through the 25th of this year. It was a title that I wasn't really going to say, oh, let's do that one again, because we've done it before. But a director who I wanted to direct for us, I said, what show do you want to tell the story of? She said, I want to tell the story of Steel Magnolias. I'm like, well, you've told that one before. She's like, but I want to tell it like a true Southern story. And I said, what does that mean to you? And she goes like, it's not 6 white women in the South. The South is a lot more than white women. And so we have a truly diverse cast of Steel Magnolias on our stage with a wonderful director at the helm for that, Deanna Martinez, who's doing brilliant things with the story that still is the story of Steel Magnolias, but making you look at it a different light and go, oh, yeah, that's more real life than I thought it could be.
Much more realistic. Sure.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things is you find those titles you can do those new imaginings with. You find those other challenging titles that make you stop and think. I used the Pillow Man as an example earlier, and that's one that we actually kept a tally of how many people left at intermission. Because it was a story, if you're familiar with Martin McDonough, it's 3 Billboards Outside Ebbings was one of his stories. And it's stories that are very compelling, but they also make you stop and look at yourself in the mirror and go, how do I feel about that? And Pillow Man, you'd find yourself laughing, and then you'd be like, I just laughed at something that I don't know if that should be funny. And it doesn't take you past the line, but it takes you to that line of saying, am I a good person or am I a bad person because I laughed at that? And that's the type of theater you need to have happen as well.
Good art makes you think.
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Exactly.
You should come out of it. Yes, you want to be entertained, and you should be entertained, but it should also work to make people better.
And it should put you on stage or on screen in the story so that you are wrestling with those types of
Correct.
questions. So success for the Pillow Man. A couple of the awards you guys.
Great. We did. We took that as part of the American Association of Community Theater Act Fest. It's a every 2 years festival that goes from around different places in the country where they perform it. But it's 12 theaters from around the country that go through a state and a regional level and then go to a national level. And we were one of the 12 theaters. Our friends up the street, Tacoma Musical Playhouse, was one of the 12 theaters the 2-year cycle before that, which is kind of telling you that something good is happening in the South Sound. Not to pat us on the back, but some good things are happening in our area. And the fact that we have such good theater in our community in abundance. If you go from Vancouver all the way up to north of Seattle and Bellingham, you've got great theater happening on that I-5 corridor. And it's just wonderful to be nestled kind of in between it because we pull patrons and artists from both sides. And they just come down and meet us in the middle, which is great.
We find the same on the Kitsap Peninsula, all the way up to Port Gamble and points north. You just got that loop of talent.
We've got a few peninsula people that come and do our shows.
Excellent, and that's great. The larger the community, the better. I think.
Yeah,
I was
talent to draw from.
My mentor always used the phrase "theater begets theater," and that's something I've glommed onto, and I've always used it through my maturity through theater, because I truly do believe it. No matter what kind of theater it is, the fact that it's existing and helping grow the art form is important. And so we all do help each other. And it's not really competition. It's a friendly partnership, really, because we do pull upon the same resources. We do pull upon the same acting pool, directing pool. And it's great to be able to call up and say, hey, I'm doing this show and I need this. Do you have it?
Right.
Sure. Come on down and grab it.
Yeah.
That's the great thing.
It's
a
Audrey
partnership.
2 puppet. Anybody out there?
I can get you one.
That's right. No, it's so true, and that's really why Greg and I do this is to just increase the visibility of so many of these wonderful theaters that people may not even know exist. There does sometimes seem to be a disconnect once you cross the bridge, that type of a thing, and that's sad because there is so much to enjoy and so much talent to take advantage of. So let's talk about this season. We've got some really exciting stuff happening. I'm excited to come see Steel Magnolias, kind of a retelling What else is on the docket this year for you guys?
After Still Magnolias, we're bringing you Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, which is a it's a stage version of it, which is one of the first times it's been on stage, by Ken Ludwig, who wrote Lend Me a Tenor, Holmes for the Holidays, Moon Over Buffalo. He's done a great job over the last few decades of writing some great stories, and he was granted permission to adapt this, and has done a great job bringing it to life. And so we're very excited, and that is one that will employ the Revolve. So make sure you come and see that one. For the holiday season, we're bringing back one that our audiences have asked us to bring back, which is A Christmas Story. And the timing couldn't be more perfect because we get the sequel to A Christmas Story this year that actually stars Peter Billingsley, and most of the original cast who are still with us will be in that new movie. So it's kind of a fun, hey, come see ours on stage and then see the new version that HBO Max is putting on. For the start of the new year in January, we're doing a great show that's all about cooking, and it's a 3-person show called Po' Boy Tango. And it's about a cooking show, and then the story that goes behind that, and there'll be food on stage, and it will smell good in here. That much we're looking forward to.
Po' boys, that's
a little bit of Creole cooking. Awesome. Then for our musical, we usually do 1 or 2 musicals a year, and our big one's always in March. And we're partnering now with the University of Washington Tacoma and their theater department. And so Maria Tanya Banda's Becerra Weingarten, who's their theater professor at UW-T, is directing Rock of Ages on our stage. So tease your hair up and get some 80s power rock going on. And when we talk about new toys, there'll be some new toys in that show that we've been hanging on to for the last 2 years and not using because we want them to debut for that show. It'll be a rock concert, that's going to be for sure. Then for our 6th show, we're doing a show called Significant Other, which is one that was on Broadway in 2017. It's actually the one that I'm directing this year. And it's a great peek into the life of late 20s, early 30s young man who's gay, and all of his girlfriends are getting married, and he's kind of left alone in that space of where do I fit into the world now?
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Exactly. And there's some great roles in there, and there's a grandmother role who kind of helps guide him through his experience. So looking forward to that one. And then we close out the season with one that is new to the stage.
Drum roll, please.
And it's based on a novella written by some author named Stephen King, and it's The Shawshank Redemption on our stage.
One of the 2 things in his life he's written.
Just one of the 2.
couple.
And that is one that we're very excited to do because it is a newer piece. Most people are familiar with the concept of it, but this one takes a blend of both what the movie did and then also going back to the original novella.
Right. Which is a masterwork in and of itself.
Exactly.
Really. And is this the first time King story has been adapted for stage? As a fan of his, I'm trying to think of one, and I can't.
It is not, actually. So you can go back initially to the 80s, and you probably just came to your mind, and it's a show that flopped miserably on Broadway and lasted, I think, if I remember correctly, 11 performances before they closed it.
I was thinking Carrie the Musical.
That's it.
Yep.
Carrie the Musical. And there's a whole, if you want a great book, it's called Not Since Carrie, and it's all about Broadway flops. But Carrie has a great cult following as well. There is another show that has been adapted to the stage, and I won't say anything more than that other than keep your eyes open.
Okay.
It might not be our only King in the next few years.
Excellent.
Well,
tease there.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you're directing a show. The theater hires professional directors and contracts designers and other production leadership positions, but all of your actors on stage are all volunteers.
We do a small travel reimbursement, so we give them a little bit of help with gas because gas isn't cheap anymore.
No.
Very thoughtful. Yeah.
No, and I'm sure that that helps take this thing up because it's people are spending time away from families and things like that, and I'm sure a little bit of help like that is greatly appreciated. But if somebody wants to get involved, auditions and things like that, how does one find out about auditions, or how does one learn about some of the other opportunities within the theater, whether it's backstage helping out or whichever?
We have, if you go to our website, that's the best way. It'll always have the most up-to-date information. We do our auditions per show, so we don't do generals at the beginning of the year and then cast from that. We actually do it per show, and it's usually about 3 months before each show happens. We'll have the auditions for those. Those are all listed on our website. There's a resource that we use called Casting Manager, which a lot of theaters in the community are using now, which kind of lets you upload all your information. Then when you want to audition for a show, you just go boop, and it gives us all your information automatically. And we do our auditions usually on Sunday and Monday nights, and then we do one night Tuesday off-site to make it a little bit easier for people who might not be able to make it directly here. Then we do callbacks, and then we cast. Usually within 3 days of the callbacks, we'll have the show cast and let the cast know, and we'll start the process for it. Volunteering here is another way. Is our website. We're always looking for volunteer ushers, helping with shows, painting. As our scenic artist is on stage, working right now, nodding her head upstage there, that we're always looking for people to help out with those projects, costumes, just general upkeep of the theater. We're not a large staff, so anybody who wants to help, we're always happy to say, sure, let's see if we can find you something
How
to do.
large is your full-time staff?
I'll go through. Myself, managing artistic director. We have our office manager. We have Blake York, our technical director. We have our education director, Stephanie Rochelle. Our production manager, Dylan Twiner. We have Frank and Nate, who are two of our carpenters, and Diana George, who is our development director on a very small scale. I've been working with her for a number of years in other journeys, and she's there to help us when we have big things that we need to do. So about 9 is what we typically run. We have some box office interns through work study program at local universities. But it's a small staff for a full year-round project that we do.
Yeah, the little moniker is a bit.
It is. It can
Yeah.
be. It can be a misconception.
Misconception.
The little theater movement was theaters that weren't the big, at the times, Pantages and all those
right,
touring
right.
houses, and it was those little community theaters. And so a lot of times we also get confused of, well, you do children's theater, like we do, but it's not what we mainly do. We do have a very robust education program that does year-round programming for students who are in school, homeschool students, and then also adults. We have a full adult education program as well.
And an improv.
Improv as well.
Classes will start soon, I think.
They do. They start later in September this month.
During COVID, quick question going back to that, how was the? I was in one show during COVID. We started our rehearsals over Zoom, and then eventually got back on stage. Did you have a similar situation where you had to alter how rehearsals were done and things like that during COVID or coming out of COVID? And are you kind of back to normal at this point?
We are pretty much back to normal. We do still, during the initial periods of rehearsal until we get to pretty much right before Tech Week, cast are still masked in rehearsals. We do everything in our power to make sure that we're protecting both our patrons and our audience and our cast members, and making sure that we're going to be able to do theater. You know, theater was the first to be closed down and the last to reopen. And so it's one of those things that some people are like, well, you're still making us wear masks. And I'm like, well, I still want to be doing theater. And that's, that is one of the ways that we can help make it available for us to be doing without having to worry too much about, what do we do if the whole cast comes down with COVID?
Self-preservation, I think, would be the term.
But to answer your question of have rehearsals changed, that in that aspect a little bit. It is a little bit different doing a masked rehearsal. I was in a show last year that was a musical, and dancing and singing in a mask is not necessarily the most fun, but boy, do you work up your cardio doing it.
Resistance training.
But we're pretty much back to our normal schedule at this point. There will always be little hiccups that happen along the way, and we'll pivot with them as we can. The great thing about theater is every day is never the same anyway. That's part of the nature of our unique thing that we do is I'll walk in to work, and I'm like, okay, I'll be at my desk for a little while today, but then I'm probably going to be up on a ladder maybe later helping do something. We all keep a change of clothes here, and we all just actually bought coveralls for ourselves. So when it gets into really messy jobs, we have something to throw on if we need to do it. But, as we came out of COVID, we waited a little bit longer. We brought our shows back to life in September of last year, was our first live on-stage show again. And we opened with a show that had been in rehearsal when the shutdown happened. And so that cast had kind of stuck together over Zoom for 18 months. And then they came back and rehearsed in person for, I think, 2 to 3 weeks before we had them up on stage performing in front of an audience again. But that was things had changed since then. We'd remodeled the theater. The set had to change a little bit, those types of things.
Good point. Yeah.
But
There's another program you guys have here I wanted to ask you about. It's your off-the-shelf readings, which I
Yes.
think that the whole idea behind that is very cool. What launched that idea, and how long has it been going? And tell the audience about that.
Off the Shelf has been around for about 9 years, and it came from a want to give our community more theater. But how can we do that without stretching our resources too thin? And so a lot of theaters would do staged readings here and there, and I thought, well, we have one night every run of a show that we could do a staged reading. So we do them on the second Thursday of the run of a show. So we do 7 a year, except for the holidays. We drop that one because it's a little too frantic and stretching the resources. But we listen to our directing community, our local directors who say, I've always wanted to try this show. And while it might not be the best for a full main stage production, it's still something our audiences should hear. So we let those directors put together a staged reading. And we do keep it simple. It's music stands on stage, script in hand. We do the whole process of applying for rights, making sure we've got everything cleared for that. And giving that director a chance to hear that piece come to life, our audience a chance to have that piece come to life, and actors a chance to, maybe they're at a point in their life where they can't commit to a full show, but they can commit to 2 rehearsals and 1 night reading, and they love that. They love that ability to come and be a part of a show.
Yeah.
And it's also an opportunity to see new talent. Maybe somebody's just moved to town, or they're like, I want to kind of get involved, but I don't want to commit to a show. Come and do this. Let's see what you can do. And you're like, wow, you need to be doing more.
And all this info is also on your website.
Correct.
Okay, so there's not going to be necessarily an audition process, or is there?
Occasionally we do auditions for them. Okay. Sometimes it's a case of people have said, I'm interested. We say, great. Let's see what happens, and put them in touch with the director.
Does it ever feature any local talent as far as the plays themselves being written by local?
Absolutely, we do. So we kind of turned it into a hybrid model during the pandemic, and we went from page to stage to off the shelf. Where we reached out to our community and said, do you have scripts you've written that you'd like to have a chance to be heard? And so we started the off-the-shelf process. And that's what happened. And so we got some. And then actually our October reading is 3 mini musicals by a local composer and 3 different authors for the books. So there are 3 very different stories that will be brought to life on stage in mid-October. And it's the name of the overall arc of the piece is called Among Many Worlds. And then there's 3 individual stories under that moniker.
So you guys have your website, TacomaLittleTheatre.com. What are some other ways, social media, perhaps?
You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We usually do a trailer for every show on YouTube. We haven't TikToked yet. We do have a TikTok. We don't use it very often. No, I'm old now. But we do. We try and keep a good presence both on our website and on the social media outlets. And we do a weekly newsletter, too. We send out pretty much only thing once a week, so you can sign up for that on our website. And that'll give you a lot of great information. It tells you about everything that's coming up and has fun little gems in there sometimes as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll get all those links.
One thing I will say that's coming up this year that might be of interest to both yourselves and to your listeners out there is the Washington State Community Theater Association Kaleidoscope Festival.
Yes, I did get an email about that, actually.
There you
That
go.
might have been from you guys.
Well, it's probably from WCTA, which I am a part of, so I have to be full disclosure. But Kaleidoscope is that first step in the national competition. And so it's open to all the community theaters in the area, and we're actually being the host theater this year. So in February, we'll be the host theater with up to 12 different companies on our stage. And the neat thing about the festival process, which if you haven't seen it before, it's fascinating, is you have 60 minutes to do the piece. It can be a cutting of a show. You just have to apply to the rights to have that cutting. Or you can do Act 1 or something like that. Whatever, you have 60 minutes to do it. You have 10 minutes to set it up, 10 minutes to take it down. And everything must fit in a 10 by 10 foot box on stage.
And is it a week-long festival? Is it a weekend?
It's a weekend,
Okay.
typically. And it is fascinating to see what you can fit into a 10 by 10 foot square and do in 60 minutes.
Get an extra actor. That does sound like something.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to be hosting.
We'll be hosting, yep.
And why not with all this wonderful technology and creativity? Well, Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure. We're so glad to rediscover, maybe discover for us.
I mean, we've only been around 104 years. I don't know how you missed us.
We're really behind times. Well, this is wonderful. Again, Chris Serface, Managing Artistic Director here at Tacoma Little Theatre, TacomaLittleTheatre.com, and all of our social media. We'll link it all in the show notes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work. We're excited to come see your show here.
Thank you. I can't wait to see you here.
All right.
And we'll have a specialty drink for you, too.
Hey, we would love that.
Right up my alley.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.